You're listening to LeaderCast, episode 105. Welcome to LeaderCast, Transforming Missions podcast with Tim Bias and Sarah Thomas, providing you with insights and resources you need to lead a movement of Jesus followers. As we think about the seasons of following Jesus, when it's time to lead, there's one message that we can sometimes forget. Who you are is how you lead. And that's the topic for today.
So who are you?
That will take way too long to answer. So how about instead we answer the question, what season are we in?
Okay, that works too, since we've been sending people to the quiz.
Yeah, and in the quiz we talk about, in the Explore season, you're setting the foundation for following Jesus. You identify your gifts and your talents in this season.
And in the Focus season, it's all about clarity of purpose.
And then there's the Grow season that's all about integration.
And when we come to Lead season, it's all about multiplication.
So if you're wondering, wait a second, they just went through 4 seasons. Yes, there are 4 seasons. And how you can find out more about these seasons, Tim's going to tell you, or you can take the quiz.
You can find the Seasons of Following Jesus quiz on the show notes page at transformingmission.org/105 or at transformingmission.org/quiz. Also want to ask you to hit the subscribe button on your podcast player so you don't miss an episode.
Thanks for pointing people to the quiz and letting me volunteer you to do that. Now, if you're a leader, it's likely that you want to have influence. You want to make things happen. And Tim reminded you, you want to multiply the impact of what's going on around you. You probably don't just want to multiply the leaders, but in our context, we're talking about multiplying disciples. Now, please hear me. I'm not saying leaders have to be at the center of everything that's happening. Far from it.
But to multiply, you need to invest in people. You need to help them understand who they are in Christ, how they have gifts to serve others. Got to help people find their purpose and live it out and integrate all of that into who they are as Jesus followers.
In the lead season, you really need a team. And it doesn't have to be a paid team, but you need a team. There's not a leader worth their words that can do it all.
So, Sarah, our first question for today is, this is for our listeners, but who are you investing in right now?
Who are you investing in to become leaders so that you don't look around and go, oh, wait a second, we don't have anyone who's capable of leading. Am I tracking with you?
You are, since I assume everybody knows what I'm thinking when I say it. Yes, as a leader, who are you at this point investing in, helping them become Jesus followers and equipping them to invite other people into following Jesus?
So before I share something with you, I want you to think back to who's the first person who invested in you as a leader. And I ask you to think about that because I can remember in 5th grade, my 5th grade teacher asking me to be a safety. Now, this was back in the day when kids could help other kids cross the street, and long before school shootings ever happened and brought metal detectors and police into schools. I won't go down that road any longer. I remember my 5th grade teacher asking me to be a safety. That was a moment that someone called me into leadership at a young age. I also remember in 8th grade when my biology teacher asked me to be on the yearbook staff, and I didn't have a clue what he was really asking me to do, but he was asking me to step into leadership as I think back about that time. And then in ninth grade, when he asked me to serve as the editor. Now, don't ask me how an eighth grader or ninth grader was supposed to edit a school yearbook, but we did. Me and the team of people that we put together made sure all of the sports team pictures were taken, all the teachers had their pictures taken, all the student pictures were taken, all the artwork was in place. We documented activities throughout the school year. And again, back in that time, junior high was all about cut and paste. Then in high school, when I started on the yearbook staff in 10th grade, and by the time I graduated, I had transitioned us to using a computer. So we went from cut and paste, literally, it was cutting pictures and pasting them on pages so that they could be duplicated to be passed out to everyone. Now, why do I share that? It's not a commentary on the times that we're living in and how times have changed. I share it because someone invested in me as a leader. That investment continued into high school when I was the only 10th grader in the yearbook class and on the yearbook staff. It continued in 11th grade when our Honor Society advisor asked me and a friend to plan a trip to Chicago for us to explore a different city and the culture of that city. Now, why in the world you would ask a 16-year-old to do such a thing? I have no idea. I'm convinced he knew our parents would help. I share that to help you to think about who are the people that invested in you and who are the people you are currently investing in right now to help them grow as a leader. And maybe who have you overlooked? Clearly for me, elementary school wasn't too early for a teacher to recognize something inside of me.
Well, you've stirred up a lot of thoughts and images in my mind. If I may take just a moment, there are lots of people who invested in me, but one of the times, and you and I were talking about this when we were putting all these things together, but I remember starting in 7th grade and going all through my 12th grade year, my senior year in high school, that every Sunday in Sunday school, there was an opening devotional. And the people who did the opening devotional were the kids in the class. And the 7th graders were doing it for seniors. And seniors are doing it for 7th graders. Somebody took a turn each week. And I didn't realize until years later that was really leader development for me.
Right.
What you've just stirred up in me is that now I know why over all these years of ministry, I worked to have children involved in worship and leading things in worship because somebody did that with me. And I'm finding ways to invest in the children or the youth so that they can have an experience of being a leader and the development in their lives. So, Sarah, you've stirred some things up in me. That's our first question. Let me go to the second one. The second question is this: are you clear about your purpose? What is your purpose? This is really important.
This question has your name written all over it, Tim. And I say that because our mission drives everything that you do. It's a part of who you are and how you lead. So can you tell us why clarity of purpose is so important for you as a leader?
Well, first, it tells us why we're doing something, and it filters what we should be focused on and what we shouldn't be focused on. And, there are lots of stories I could tell, but really the question that you ask is something like this: if it doesn't help us get to where we're going, why are we doing it? Is it part of our mission? Now, let me digress just a moment, following your examples already today.
See what happens when you're a leader?
Lots of times when we're in leadership, especially in the church, and it may be this way in school organizations like parent-teacher organizations or something else, we don't want to hurt people's feelings. So we're willing to take on a lot of things that don't get us to where we want to be because we want to be liked and we don't want to hurt people's feelings. If we've got clarity of purpose, we have to keep things focused and moving in the direction of reaching that purpose. And sometimes that's saying no. So that's number one. The second thing is that I'm always thinking down the road. That's the strategic part of me, or the futuristic part. You'll straighten me out after this podcast. It's not that I'm not present in the moment, but I'm always asking myself, what's the impact of what we're doing, or how is that going to impact us? Will it lead us closer to our purpose or farther away from our purpose? Is it completely outside what we need to be focused on? Can I say it this way? Does it take us into the weeds of special interest and individual causes? Why are we in the weeds? It's because we're not focused on the purpose. And every church that I've been in, or every organization that I've had an opportunity to lead, there are wonderful, wonderful, wonderful ideas, and they do great things. But if they're not focused on why we exist, why are we doing them? That's the question I always ask. So I'm always calling people back to our purpose. And I guess I have a lot of fun with people sometimes because we are focused, and it feels so good to be moving in that direction. But my personality also lets me have fun with people who I have to keep calling back because I can find ways to poke at them because they're not focused on the purpose. Now, does that make sense to you?
It absolutely makes sense. And let me point folks back to episode 104, because in that episode, we also talk about boundaries, and that when we're talking about compassion for people and caring for people, one of the most caring things that we can do is have boundaries and be clear about what is okay and what's not okay. And Tim, part of what I'm hearing you say when you talk about clarity of purpose is just that. You're providing boundaries of what's okay and what's not okay so that folks know how to operate and what they can operate within. So we talk more about that in episode 104. I think you've got something else to say. Thank you for letting me jump in there and point folks back to the last episode.
You're helping me with clarity of purpose, so I appreciate it. I'm trying to be the kind of person I was created to be, and then be the leader that grows out of that kind of character. So if I'm first seeing you as a child of God, and not necessarily as a Christian or a church member or an atheist, whether you're clergy or laity, full-time, part-time, local pastor, deacon, elder, tall, short, male, female, if I'm seeing you for who I believe God created you to be, that's where I start. I don't start with your politics. I don't start with your preferences. I don't start with all the things that you bring with you. The purpose is constantly reminding me, and I remind others of who God created them to be and our focus. And when people focus on preferences and special interest, their personal agendas, I just got to call you back to the purpose. Because oftentimes what we end up doing is the blame and shame stuff. Because if you don't start where I start, then you're in the wrong place. Or if you don't agree what I agree with me, then there must be something wrong with you. Now, if I can start with you as being a child of God, then you're unique and have your own worth, and I get to be more of who God created me to be because you're in my life. That's part of the purpose of which I live.
So, for those that are listening, you now see why I say who you are is how you lead. Tim just illustrated for us that he's a Christ-centered, purpose-driven, future-looking, strategic, and missional leader. It's who he is. It's also how he leads. I'm talking about you as if you're not sitting here with me recording this episode, but you just demonstrated, Tim, and articulated for all of us why we need clarity of purpose and why it's so important for leaders?
Sarah, I wish I could say something that makes that even better, but I can't. That if we're not leading out of who we are, of who God created us to be, then I'm going to say it this way, then we're not where God would have us be. And that's part of the reason we're doing the podcasts. That's part of the reason we have the blogs. That's the reason we have Bible studies and quizzes, is so that we can help you as a Jesus follower become a courageous leader who God created you to be. Our third question is there integrity in your thoughts, feelings, and actions in all aspects of your life? We just did part of a podcast last week on this. Is there integrity in your thoughts, feelings, and actions in all aspects of your life?
Tim, you're now pushing the envelope of who we are is how we lead.
No, I'm just reminding our listeners, you aren't a parent at one moment and a spouse at another moment and a Jesus follower at a third moment. You don't show up to worship on Sunday saying one thing, go to the baseball field on Sunday afternoon and say something different, and then go home at night and speak to your family and still another way. Who you are is how you lead. That's what we're talking about, integration.
Now you're sounding like me, Tim Bias. You asked us the question that we need to consider. Is there integrity in your thoughts, your feelings, and actions in all aspects of your life? And if you said no, the question becomes, okay, what's a step that you can take to bring alignment in all of the relationships around your thoughts, feelings, and actions? If you said, yeah, then keep going.
Invest in other people to help them understand who they are in Christ. Clarify your purpose and integrate your thoughts, feelings, and actions where you live, work, and play.
So here's how I say this for people of faith. Are you following Jesus every day? Not the first 5 minutes of your day. That might be the time that you read scripture and you pray. It might be a time that you read some devotional material, and that is all good and necessary. But that's not the only moment that you need to seek following Jesus. That should be the spark that energizes you for the rest of the day to continue living into who Jesus would have you be. And at the end of the day, we're not just talking about those last moments before your head hits the pillow and you might offer a thank you prayer to Jesus. Are you following Jesus where you live, work, and play throughout the entire day? So the beginning and the end of the day might be important moments. I think that we teach folks in a 4-step process to do just that. So we're not saying that that's not a bad thing, but those moments aren't isolated and set aside. They are the bookends of your day to help you live into being a Jesus follower wherever you work, wherever you play, wherever you live, so that is a part of who you are. Again, the title of this episode, Who You Are is How You Lead.
So what you've stirred up in my thinking, Sarah, is that being a Jesus follower is not a destination. It's not something that you work to achieve. It's not something that you decide that you're going to do because it's a good thing. Being a Jesus follower, becoming a follower of Jesus, becoming who God created you to be, is who you are. And so you're not deciding something. It permeates everything you do. Because of who you are, you make your decisions that way. You develop your relationships. And it's not because you're saying, oh, I'm a Jesus follower, I got to do this. It's because you do that and you say, oh, I'm a Jesus follower. I mean, it's kind of like that way. And that's what we're trying to help people see as they move through the seasons of not only of their lives, but of their leadership. And being a Jesus follower, there are times in which you grow deeper into those relationships. just being who God created you to be. I didn't mess us up, did we? That's just what you had me thinking about in the midst of this podcast.
You are right on track. So let me remind you of the 3 questions that we asked you to consider today. First, who are you investing in right now as a leader? Who are you helping to grow as a leader? And that gets at the whole point that we were talking about in terms of this season being a season of multiplication. If you're not investing in people, you're going to have a hard time multiplying because you're not building those relationships. Our second question was, are you clear about your purpose and what is your purpose? If you're clear about it, you should be able to articulate it. And Tim gave us an example of how he seeks to live out his purpose. And then our third question was, is there integrity in your thoughts, feelings, and actions in all aspects of your life? Use those 3 questions as you seek to continue in the season that you're living in, and ask yourself the question, are you following Jesus every day? Okay, let me remind you that you can find the quiz to unlock which season you're living in and other resources for this episode at transformingmission.org/105. As you seek to be the leader that Jesus created you to be, remember, who you are is how you lead. So go lead a movement of Jesus followers. Bye for now.